In this presentation, I want to discuss furniture from two Roman find contexts, which I had the privilege to study in the last 35 years. The first group comes from Herculaneum, a town which, as is well known, was buried under volcanic ash, just like Pompeii, when Mount Vesuvius erupted in AD 79. The second group consists of furniture from a ship, found together with its full equipment, including many wooden objects. The ship sank in the river Rhine in the Netherlands in the late 2nd century AD. The majority of preserved pieces of Roman furniture consists of items of metal and stone. They are often beautifully worked and testify to great craftsmanship. Items of wood, on the other hand, are much rarer and often fragmentarily preserved. As is shown by the numerous images of wooden furniture, the original situation must have been the opposite. Most pieces of furniture were made of wood, whereas only a small part was made from other materials. What remains in the present, in other words, bears little relation to the reality of the Roman past. How then to create a representative image of the residential decoration of ancient Roman houses and public buildings? Roman wooden furniture usually accidentally survives. Wood is well preserved in extremely dry environments such as Roman Egypt or the Crimea, which is maybe less well known but very important for our knowledge of Hellenistic and Roman woodworking. Wood can also be preserved in extremely wet environments. Examples coming from the Rhine will be discussed later. Finally, carbonized wood can be preserved if it is treated correctly. Wood, for instance, carbonized during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, a disaster that buried the town of Herculaneum under the volcanic ash, pumice, and mud. The heat of the ashes burned the wood, but instantly sealed it, separating it from oxygen and prevented further burning of the material in the days after the eruption. The town was covered by a layer of more than 20 meters of volcanic material that sealed it until its rediscovery in 1709. Since the beginning of regular excavations in 1738, all sorts of objects made of organic material have been dug up, with only a very small proportion surviving to the present. During the 18th and 19th centuries, excavations were organized by means of mine shafts, as can still be seen from the case of the ancient theatre about 25 meters beneath modern ground level. A proven method to preserve organic material, however, was not at hand until 1927, when large-scale excavations started, directed by the Italian archaeologist Amedeo Maiuri, and part of the ancient town was uncovered. Nowadays, an area of about 200 by 300 meters can be visited. On the slide, it is depicted in black. The original ground level is situated some 27 meters below the modern city of Herculaneum. The new method of treating the carbonized wood, introduced at the beginning of the large excavation campaign, has probably been adapted from the first report of the finding of Tutankhamun's tomb, published by Howard Carter and Arthur Mays in 1923, who described the use of melted paraffin wax for the preservation of wooden objects. And I quote, "Courage was needed to take the step, but we were thoroughly justified by the result, for the wax penetrated the materials and held everything firm." A translation in Italian came out in the same year, and it is very well possible that Mayuri or one of his assistants took notice of this passage. This preservation method links my presentation of today with Geoffrey Killen's earlier contribution to the seminar. In some of the thicker timbers, the wood has only carbonized on the surface, and the internal structure remains more or less intact. The conservation is therefore due to the combination of carbonization and lack of oxygen in a wet environment sealed by a huge layer of volcanic material. Organic material has been preserved throughout the town. Better than in any other Roman town, we gain an impression of wood used in architecture as building material in combination with stone, door and window frames, window shutters, and doors and partition walls. We also encounter other finds in wood and other organic materials which were lost elsewhere, as is shown on the next slide. The selection gives a writing tablet, a wooden purse, a bread, and remains of ingredients for cooking. Furthermore, as this is the main topic of our seminar today, about 40 pieces of wooden furniture have been preserved in Herculaneum. I studied this material from 1985 onwards, wrote my master thesis on it, and finally my dissertation, defended in 1994 and published in the first edition in English in 1999. During this study, my previous experience in actual furniture making helped me a lot. In the book, I present a catalogue and discuss the different forms. I also analyze the pieces technically and discuss their possible functions by means of contextual analysis. In the next section, I will discuss the main categories of the Herculaneum material. The shapes are simple, mostly functional, but not without elaborate details, and occasionally adorned with carefully executed decorations. 15 pieces of storage furniture have survived in Herculaneum. These can be divided into chests, cupboards, racks, and a very special category, that of household shrines. Apart from the racks, the slide shows examples of all these categories. Most of these are simple, utilitarian forms, like the small cupboards or the chest. Others, however, are very elaborate pieces with very beautiful and also intricately elaborated details, such as the combination of a cabinet with a house altar on top, shown here. These give a good insight into the far-reaching skills of the furniture makers who were active in Herculaneum. In most of the cupboard doors, the construction of framing and panels was used. I will come back to this later, as well as to the way the doors hinge. In most of the cupboard doors, the construction of framing and panels was used. And in this piece, as hinges were made of a number of small cylinders assembled in a band, alternately fixed and moving, like a modern piano hinge. In this case, wooden cylinders were used, but in many cases, use was made of bone instead. Combinations of bone and dark wood have also been found. The household shrine or edicula shown in this picture is an expertly made piece of furniture, as the marble, as the capitals show, and the moldings in the columns and the pattern and the moldings in the columns. Despite the many similarities with the different categories of storage furniture in Herculaneum, all shapes are unique. In order to answer the question whether there may have been more copies of one of the same piece of furniture, or even to the question whether serial production existed along the Bay of Naples in Roman times, I present a drawing of a plaster cast from a cabinet found at neighboring Pompeii at the beginning of the 20th century, here shown on the right side of the slide, next to one of the actual examples from Herculaneum. This cast was obtained in the same way as the famous casts of people who died in the volcanic eruption. The cavities left by the organic material in the volcanic material were filled with plaster or concrete, and these were then exposed. Unfortunately, the cast of the Pompeii cabinet is known only from the drawing shown here. The original was lost during the bombing of Pompeii in World War II. However, the resemblance to the Herculaneum specimen is striking and seems to point to the same design drawing or even the same workshop. In a shop that was part of the so-called House of Neptune and Amphitrite in Herculaneum, here shown in grey with amber entrance number 6 over here. Much of the wooden interior has been preserved. Striking is a still existing rack for the storage of amphorae. The actual situation is shown on the right. The drawing was made for the publication of the excavation by Amedeo Maiuri in 1958. The next category I will present here are beds and couches. The bed at the left top originally had high boards mounted on 3 sides of the bed frame. It had 4 legs formed on the left, with a bronze casing. The bases of the legs are linked by stretchers at each end. To support the mattress, a system of intersecting slats are fitted into the rails of the bed frame, with half-lap joints at the intersections and mortise and tenon joints at the end of the slabs, very much resembling the modern slatted base. Other forms of beds are children's beds, like the cradle, with 2 curved rockers at the bottom of the so-called biclinia. Instances of couches joined together at right angles, as you see over here. Like the one, it is a variation of the better known triclinium, 3 couches or beds furnishing a dining room. Six wooden tables, shown in the drawing on the right, have been preserved in Herculaneum, all with one exception of the same type, a round tabletop resting on 3 legs. which are modeled into more or less stylized animal legs. The claw of a lion or dog forms the base, and the leg is crowned by an architectural motif. At 2/3 of the height, a figurative decoration is sometimes mounted on the front and sides. The table shown on the top left has the heads of griffins, with their typically sharp ears and protruding tongue. The table at the bottom right, unique because of its crescent-shaped tabletop, is decorated with heads of the young Dionysus Bacchus with garlands of ivy. The legs of the table on the bottom left are decorated with a hunting dog emerging from an acanthus calyx and running upwards, its rib cage pressed against the table leg. All decorations refer to the function of the tables. They were used as dining tables. The griffins, through their association with Dionysus Bacchus, refer to the wine consumed with the meal. The dogs refer to the food itself, at the back of the hunt. The curved legs go back to Hellenistic models, but the decorative addition of a whole animal or of animal or human heads is a Roman invention. The table legs are connected with the tabletops with mortise and tenon joints. In two tables, the three legs are connected 2/3 of the way up by stretchers attached to the back of each leg with wooden pins or mortise and tenon joints. These rungs meet in the center, where a round hole was made to take a vertical pin, as is suggested in the reconstruction drawing. The joint was secured with a molded boss at the top and probably with another underneath, as can be deduced from examples in marble used mostly as decoration of gardens in Roman houses. The making of such a table leg is shown in the detail below, a detail of Roman marble sarcophagus of the 3rd or 4th century CE. And you see a cabinet maker using an adze to produce the table leg. Seating furniture is scarce. There are only 3 benches, like the one at the bottom left, and one item until recently always interpreted as a stool, probably because of the photograph published of it by Amedeo Maiuri, and here shown on the right, on which the item is shown together with a weaving loom. The so-called stool has a very basic form. It is a square seat upon 4 straight legs, which are tied together by 2 sets of 4 rungs. All the joints are mortise and tenon joints. What makes this piece of furniture particularly interesting, however, is the seat, which is decorated with an 8-pointed star in veneer, we call wood mosaic, etched by a triple receding molding. In the drawing, the 4 figures at the bottom left show a hypothetical reconstruction of the way the star was designed using 2, later invisible, auxiliary circles. In my study on the Herculaneum furniture, I follow the original interpretation of this furniture item as a stool. However, my opinions changed in 2014 when in the Netherlands I was part of a team that prepared an exhibition focusing on the IKEA concept in Roman times. The exhibition comprised several pieces of furniture found in Herculaneum, which for the occasion had been copied and were put on display. One of these was the so-called stool. While he was working on a copy of the stool, the cabinet maker, also my former teacher in cabinet making, called me and told me he had to disappoint me. According to him, the object could not have been a stool because it couldn't support the weight of a human being. As you will understand, the object most likely was a table, and that, while in use, the tabletop was always at least partly visible. I now will shortly focus on the wood species used for the pieces of furniture. For my study, I got permission to study 50 samples of 18 different pieces of furniture. Most of the furniture items found in Herculaneum were made entirely of silver fir, Abies alba. I therefore suggested that this wood came from the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. Indeed, ground drilling in 2004 and 2005 by Italian botanists has confirmed this hypothesis. Samples of 5 pieces of furniture indicated that for specific uses, hardwood had been chosen. The cradle was made of oak. For one of the tabletops, walnut was used. One table leg was made of hornbeam and another of boxwood. Finally, the back of the chest was made of maple. Apart from the different forms of furniture and the techniques used for their manufacture, the very detailed excavation reports of the excavations and the still existing architectural remains in Herculaneum allow us to get a detailed image of the context in which the material was found. This contextual analysis provides, for example, clues about the use of chests for the storage of food in basements of houses. The data from Herculaneum, combined with written sources, also allow us to reconstruct ancient contexts like, for example, the interior of a triclinium, the standard Roman dining room, even if the original position of the 3 couches has not been preserved. Niches in the architecture of the room, as shown at the top left, provide us with the missing link. In these dining rooms, a round table, as one of the tables shown earlier, a round table was placed in the middle of a standard arrangement of 3 couches. Each couch could contain 3 individuals, so that a maximum of 9 individuals could attend a dinner, as is shown in the reconstruction drawing on the right. In general, from the contextual analysis, the following conclusions can be drawn. Firstly, most pieces of wooden furniture were of practical use in the daily lives of the local inhabitants. Secondly, wooden furniture was rarely placed in a room to display the social status of the owner, in marked contrast to marble and bronze showpieces, which were usually placed in formal spaces. At first glance, there seems to be one exception. In dining rooms, modern wooden furniture was used. As for the couches, the visible parts were made of bronze, and the wooden tables were made of species of precious wood. The tables had to be light so that it was easy to remove them quickly during dinner courses. And that's all because there was not much room left for people to walk around the room when the room was filled with furniture and people. Perhaps the most important observation is that the general idea that Roman houses were scarcely furnished is not attested in Herculaneum. Handbooks on Roman furniture and works discussing the interior of Roman houses often state that Roman residences were sparsely furnished. A house contained only the most necessary items of furniture. This idea arose in the 19th century when interest in Roman antiquities took flight. The contextual analysis in the Herculaneum furniture thus questioned the validity of the notion. And now I pass to the Rhine. In 2003, in the middle of the Netherlands, near the city of Utrecht, a Roman ship, which could be dated to the second half of the 2nd century CE, was found in a now silted up branch of the river. This in itself was no remarkable find. Roman ships are found with some regularity also in the Netherlands. Yet in this case, and uniquely, the ship's cabin could be salvaged intact, including its contents, which included, as must be clear by now, all furniture. Some of the pieces that were found I want to discuss briefly here: a cupboard, a chest, and part of a bed or couch. The best preserved piece is a cupboard of 73 centimeters in height, with 2 doors and 4 internal compartments. Here, only the front of the original piece is shown, but the reconstruction shows the whole cupboard. During excavation, the left door was found closed and the right door open, as can be seen here. Unlike the Herculaneum cupboard shown earlier, it is obvious that the framing of these doors is only suggested by moldings in the front side. In this case, hinges were metal ones, attached with nails, bended at the back. The same phenomenon is visible in the chest. This piece measures 132 centimeters in length and was probably also used as a bench in the cabin. The bed poles were made on the lathe and attached to the bed frame with nails, also bended towards the end. All 3 pieces were furthermore made of reused wood, but not without elegancy, at least for the parts that were visible, that is, when the cupboard and chests were closed. The ship and the items of furniture found in it are datable to the late 2nd century CE. Completely unique in this respect is that in the ship's cabin a toolkit was salvaged too, giving us an idea of the materials with which he worked, the carpenter or shipsman worked his wood. Here 4 of the many tools found are shown. Strikingly also is the complete absence of a plane for making moldings, like the ones made in the cupboard. The answer to this absence is the answer to this absence may be that it is very difficult to identify such a plane, as it probably was made of a shuttle and a wooden case, as can be shown with this example from the beginning of the 20th century. When the wood has decayed, only a small iron plate remains. I have to remove it to show it to you. And I hope it's clear. So when the wood has decayed, only a small iron plate remains, making the original tool barely recognizable. The items found in the river Rhine show similarities to the Herculaneum furniture in outward appearance, as can be seen on the slide for the cupboards. But there are also differences. A number of cupboards from Herculaneum, like the one shown on the left, have doors and sides constructed from framing and loose panels to prevent warping, also called unglued tongue and groove. This is shown in the drawing in the center. The cupboard from the Rhine, however, has false panels. Frame and panel are made from one piece of wood. There is therefore a striking difference between the cabinet maker of the ship inventory and the Herculaneum cabinet makers. The first left as it were, his signature in this fake panels, and also in the bended nails. A phenomenon which occurs more often on ships, as also in non-movable parts, and seems to be integral part of the practice of ship carpentry. It appears that the person who made the furniture was the actual sailor. On the outside, he adapted his furniture to what appears to have been the Roman norm. Apart from the two examples which I have presented today, there are some other ensembles of surviving Roman furniture, but these are mostly isolated incidents without the original context, which, as must be clear, is of utmost importance. Both groups thus give us a unique insight in the daily use, techniques used, and position of furniture in Roman times. Thank you very much for your attention.